We are a spiritual community. We don't even call ourselves a church, and some of us are even uncomfortable with the word religious. But right there in our vision, which I still think should be our mission, and we're going to continue to talk about that, it says that we are a spiritual community for our time. But I find that a lot of us don't talk too much about theology very often. And I wonder why that is. Well, one is that I think even the word scares us. Theology? You mean you're going to make me talk about God? I think another reason why UUs don't talk about theology that much is because it is so very varied. And each of us are at different points of understanding it all. Some of us are still deconstructing what we were taught as children. Some of us have pretty much constructed where we think we are, and there's a whole bunch of us in the middle. And it can take several hours to articulate what we might believe, if we can at all. Many of us are very good at articulating what we don't believe, amazingly good at it. But when I ask people what they do believe, I often get blank stares. But when I ask them what they don't believe, oh, they list off a whole list of all the things. In theological terms, much of what we don't believe is a specific kind of theology. It's referred to as systematic theology in religious fields. Systematic theology is a discipline of Christian theology that formulates an orderly, rational, and coherent account of the doctrines of Christian faith. It comes directly from strict interpretation of the Bible, stating that what the Bible says is true and that nothing changes. And right there is where we lose a lot of UUs. The Bible being the authority of what is true about God and about none of that changing. And when you tell me what you don't believe, a lot of it is related to systematic theology, the inerrancy of the Bible, the concept of salvation and select salvation through the belief of a specific deity, the certainty of a prescribed version of an afterlife, the concept of hell, and all the rules. But here's the thing. That is just one type of theology. Yes, it is a very dominant theology spread in conservative Christian contexts, but there are plenty of other ways to think about our beliefs or to think about God. This was one of the most liberating parts of going to seminary. After seminary, I could articulate my support for Black liberation theology, which positions Jesus as a fighter for the oppressed and sees liberation as the point of our beliefs. Liberation from multiple forms of political and social and economic and religious subjugation. Yeah, I love Black liberation theology. I could appreciate feminist theology, which is found in many world religions that looks at theology from a feminist perspective, encouraging us to examine the role of women, reinterpreting the patriarchal stereotypes, and seeing metaphors and imagery around God in a feminine context. Ooh, cool. Feminist theology, love that. And queer theology, well, that encouraged me to look beyond the male-female binary that's reinforced in almost every world religion. It encourages to see how gender variance and queer themes have always been present through all sacred texts. Sorry, I'm having problems with words. I'll find them, I promise. Although those words have not, and those themes, those queer themes have not been interpreted as such. But the one that I love the most, and the concept that I'm inviting you to consider today, is that theology doesn't need to be about God at all. It can be about whatever has meaning for you. It could be nature, the universe, the spirit that connects us. It could be human connection, science, or reason. Feel free as I'm talking about this to substitute whatever word you wish when I'm talking about God or faith or theology this morning. So all of those ideas were liberating for me, but nothing rocked my world like process theology, because it was everything that systematic theology wasn't. It wasn't static, it was always changing. It wasn't all about God, it was about my interaction with the divine and my own personal growth. It wasn't about the binary between good, which a heaven idea, and evil, a hell or Satan, or the idea that we're born a certain way, especially as sinners. Instead, it allowed room for our own moral compass and free will. And it wasn't about an omnipotent God that is often seen as coercive or vengeful. Nor is it the God that I always saw as a little bit more like Santa Claus, the one that's been determining whether you've been good or bad, or the God that grants us wishes like a big genie in the bottle. Instead, process theology is about a mutual and growing relationship where both God and us have power and agency. So let me begin by giving a really, really bad synopsis of process theology. And I say it's going to be bad because to say that process theology is complex is as much of an understatement as saying, well, the pandemic has been inconvenient. Let's start with the fact that it didn't start as a theology at all. Process theology was first defined by Alfred North Whitehead, who was a mathematician mostly and a philosopher. His thoughts were profound, and they ended up applying to fields as diverse as ecology and education, physics, biology, economics, and psychology, and of course, then theology. Alfred North Whitehead's books have been said to be the absolute hardest books in the English language to read. Therefore, much of what we know about process theology has been what has been interpreted and translated through his followers. Process theology has become a mainstay of liberal religion. That's what we are, a liberal religion. And process theology is a dominant part of saying, yes, we are always in process. We are always changing. Our beliefs are ever growing. So let's talk about what process theology is in a very, very, very overgeneralized way. So the idea is accepting that our life is made up and our world is made up of these individual moments. Whitehead calls them occasions. So here's one now. There's another one, and another one, and another one. And everything in the universe has them. My dog at home is laying on our couch and is sleeping, and then may get up and get a drink of water. And then there's another moment. A tree has occasions. A seed pod dropping, a new tree growing, a blowing in the wind. And all of these occasions all together creates the unity of which we are all a part. We are all having moments all the time. We are also making decisions from moment to moment. Sometimes we're conscious of those decisions and sometimes we aren't, but we are still making them. Here's one of the factors of process theology, which is that God or the moral arc or the universe, whatever it is pulling us to make good decisions. It's the idea that there is goodness pulling us, urging us, but we can still make our own decisions. That power of good drives our moral nature, but we decide ultimately what we want to do. We have that free will. Whitehead calls our free will creativity, and I love that description. We have the creativity to create our next moment and series of moments, however we want. And that pull for good, which Whitehead calls the initial aim, is God's creative pull on the world. It's not coercion. It's not pushing will down on us, but it's just a little nudge to help move towards a more positive and creative outcome. So then here's the critical piece of process theology. So my decision what to do in my moment influences you. And then yours influences me. And my actions will influence my dog and whether or not he has that water to drink. And all of our actions influence that tree and whether it has an environment in which to grow that seed pod. And then, this is the part that blew my theological mind. All of those actions, all of those little actions that we're all making, those shape God. What? Because God or the universe is shaped by the accumulation of all of those little moments and actions. This is the part that had me rethink theology because it turned a number of things about traditional theology on its head for me. Instead of God being up there somewhere, God is shaped by all of nature and all of us. Every single thing that we do and the decisions that we make shape and create the entire universe. So that means I shape God, and then God is changed. What? Seriously? I get to change God? So this attacked all of my childhood thoughts, right? Because how powerful is that? The actions that I take make an impact on you, and together we change the collective universe or God, however you think about it. So in a way, that means I'm co-creating my existence with the divine. For me, that was an incredibly powerful idea. I am not in a world on my own. I am interacting with all of you, with all living and non-living things, and they are interacting with me. So let's say you find a little bit of intrigue in this, beyond watching your minister's mind explode continually at this idea. Let's say that you find something about process theology. What are the implications for you? So first, if we believe that we are all made up of these individual moments and occasions, and that all those occasions influence everyone else, and may even influence God, then we are called for our decisions to have impact. If I'm making a decision and it only impacts me, that's a totally different thing than if I make a decision and it impacts all of humanity and all of nature and all of God, if you believe in God. Honestly, it's a little bit of pressure, but it sure does motivate me to make good decisions. I also want to listen in my life for that initial aim, that pull for good. I want to be incorporating it into my decisions. I know that I have the ultimate control on what I do, but I really want to make decisions that will positively impact as many people as possible. And that means I need to listen to that little voice, that aim, that pull for good. And then there's our seventh principle of Unitarian Universalism, the interconnected web of all being. The knowledge that what I do impacts the web is very powerful. This has huge implications for social justice and environmental concerns. What I do, who I vote for, how I consume, the words that I use. When I make a decision, I need to think about who else it impacts and if it is doing harm or good in the impact. I think this is a key element of liberal theology that conservative theologies don't have. What I do makes an impact that is not static, and therefore we need to think about the web differently. And finally, I think this impacts our idea of what we leave to the world. It gives me reassurance to know that my presence on earth impacted other people and changed the very nature of the communities I was in and the energy of the universe in a small way. Not all of us leave children and grandchildren or leave our china or precious moments collections in the world, but all of us leave a mark in some way. That is the kind of legacy that I can feel good about. So we are all works in process. Literally, this moment and this one and this one all make up our life. And our lives touch each other's lives, and we impact the world. And we collectively make up the creative force that connects us all. So I have a little process theology blessing for you. May you feel the impact of every moment in your process of being. May you know that your process of becoming, however messy it may be, has changed me and so many others in your world and in this community. May you always look for and feel the pull of good on your process. May you be aware of the impact of others with your decisions and try to make some that help the collective good. And may you know that you are creatively collaborating with the universe to bring it into its fullest potential. Your life, your actions, and your love, they all matter. May it be so.